Next, for today's perspective, it's a collection of real-life stories we can only tell because of a chance discovery. It takes us back to the Baltic states of Lithuania back in 1930, just before the outbreak of the Second World War. There was a writing competition for Jewish teenagers to describe their lives, their dreams, their hopes and their fears. There were hundreds of stories. The winner was to be announced on September the 1st, 1939. Never happened, because on that day Hitler invaded Poland on the very same day. The stories disappeared until 2017 in a cellar in a Lithuanian church. Fast forward to today, and the New Yorker cartoonist Krimstein has turned some of those autobiographical accounts into a graphic novel. Published in France this week, Vivre, Life, is available in English too, When I Grow Up. And Ken joins us now in the studio, I'm delighted to say. Ken, just take us through this incredible story from the root to the fruit of how you saw them and became involved.
Yeah, it was quite by accident. The New York Times had reported that they were discovered in this church, this incredible trove. I found out about it about 5 months later, and the head of the organization that had done it, which was called YIVO, it was, I call it the University Without Walls for the Country Without Borders, said, Ken, if you want to draw these up and do them in a comic graphic novel format, go to Vilnius. And I found myself there in the summer holding these extraordinary anonymous autobiographies written by teenagers on the brink of World War II. They did not know what was coming. It was part of an ethnographic competition, quite extraordinary, and they survived. They were found in church organ pipes and buried under Pravda magazines in this church in central Lithuania. And there I was at the National Library looking at them, holding them.
So you then went through them and you picked out 6 stories.
6 made it to the book, probably translated 12 to 14. I had a translator help me, yeah.
And tell me why you chose those 6.
Well, I wanted to show the diversity of the culture that was in this land that I called Yiddishuania. I mean, there was no border, but they were united by the Yiddish language. And it was a diverse civilization, really. And I wanted to show rich, poor, boys, girls, religious, non-religious, urban, you know. And so that was how I broke it up, yeah.
Some of them you've chosen, because looking through these, they are incredible stories.
Yes.
You've got, I mean, just stories of everyday life, but you know, a young boy who's in love. You've got a daughter whose father told her not to pray for him because her prayers didn't matter. Is that right?
Well, that's almost right. I mean, I had to envision her words as a proto-feminist, a woman who, in the Jewish tradition, women weren't supposed to be able to stand and pray. And her father died, and she was a rebel, and she stood and prayed, and someone ran up, she wrote this in her diary, ran up from because the women are in a balcony, and said, you mustn't do that, don't you know, these were her words, not mine, I couldn't believe, don't you know a woman's prayer is worth nothing? And a teenage girl. So this is what I got, moments of life that were unvarnished truth, and it made me understand that these are people, like you and I.
Let me bring in the story of one of them who managed to get in despite not being a teenager. So this was a girl who's 11 and a half. Yeah. Tell us about this tale, and also the fact that we now later know that she survived 3 concentration camps and had a family.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. So when they discovered this trove of documents and they were photographing them and looking at them, you weren't supposed to put your name in there. You weren't supposed to put your town, because they were wise enough to know that if your parents found out, you wouldn't write the truth. A picture of her was in there, and it ran in the New York Times, and her son gets a call. That's my mother. And she survived. And I called her the rule breaker, because maybe that helped her survive. I don't know. You know, but Bebe Epstein, right. Yeah, and her son, Michael Leventhal. And it was an incredible story. And she had just passed, actually, just before the book came out, but her son was so delighted that I was able to tell her story. And they learned of her life that they didn't even know about. It's an amazing story.
What did they say, seeing your work?
Oh, I asked for I mean, it's an incredible story. I got a picture of her with her grandchildren, Bebe Epstein, and he sent it to me. He sent me a couple. They were very happy to have her story told. Yeah.
It's amazing to read. It's heartbreaking as well, because clearly everybody knows what happened next. Amazing to hear Beba's story that she survived. I guess we've no idea, you've no idea what happened to the others.
You know, I tried, obviously without names and towns, it was difficult. I can only hope that, I mean, the character, one person was so audacious they wrote to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and heard back, well, from the consulate. And you think if somebody, a teen, has that kind of passion, maybe they made it, I hope. Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's a time where they, the young Jewish teenagers saw glimpses of what was to come with the Nazi regime, but it couldn't quite, I mean, through your tales, you still, there's a lot of hope there. There's a lot of stories. And just tell me briefly about this, the young boy that's in love and the tale so many people can be familiar with.
Yeah, I called, in English, it was called The Boy Who Loved a Girl. And he writes about how his heart is breaking for this one girl in town. And I had to understand it was a little complicated. And it appears that he and all his boyfriends like the same girl. So he has a huge adventure, almost a Pinocchio-ish tale, and he finally comes back to town to see the girl. And one of his buddies says to him, oh, she's dating this other guy. And his heart breaks. And when I saw that these were living, live, real people, I could relate to my kids, myself. This was the poignancy of it to me. And I had to imagine.
Let me ask you finally, just your brief thoughts on the fact that this is coming out at a time in the midst of the Gaza conflict,
yes,
in the midst of a rise in anti-Semitism worldwide, in the midst of a lot of criticism, allegations, genocide of the Israeli government. How you reflect on this work at this time?
I just feel that we have to understand that every teenager deserves, that teenagers are teenagers wherever they are in the world. All they want to do is hate their parents, love their parents, date their girlfriends, do what teenagers do. And we have to validate that. That means life is the thing. That's why I like the French title, Vivre. I really think it doesn't get rid of the tragedies that happen, but maybe it makes us more aware so that we'll try harder to not let them happen, I hope.
Ken Krimstein, lovely to talk to you. Vivre is out today. When I Grow Up is already available in English.
Thank you.